Welcome to Calming Bedtime Journeys channel. Tonight we step through the heavy wooden gates of a medieval castle as winter tightens its grip around every tower and courtyard. Have you ever wondered what it truly felt like to survive a great blizzard inside a fortress built from stone, smoke, and silence? What secrets were hidden behind thick walls when roads vanished beneath snow and the outside world became almost unreachable tonight? You will walk among servants carrying firewood, guards watching frozen landscapes, and families gathering beside flickering flames. You will discover that a castle was not only a place of battles and kings, but also a home filled with ordinary worries, small comforts, and quiet moments. So, before you settle into the story, take a second to like the video and hit subscribe, and while you listen, comment below with your location plus local time. It is always fascinating to imagine these old stories being heard from different corners of the world. Now, dim the lights. You stand before a great medieval castle in the year 1471 as the first powerful winds sweep across the surrounding hills. Snow moves through the air like a white curtain, covering paths, fields, and distant villages. The fortress rises above the landscape with thick stone walls and tall towers. It looks strong, yet even the strongest walls have limits. You feel the cold air pressing against your face as you approach the entrance. Your cloak pulls tightly around your shoulders, and your boots sink into fresh snow with every careful step. The storm has been building for hours inside the castle. Life continues, not because the people are comfortable, but because they have no choice. Medieval castles were homes, workplaces, storage centres, and defensive structures all at once. A blizzard does not stop the responsibilities of daily life. The guards must watch. The cooks must prepare meals. The servants must carry supplies through freezing corridors. The animals must be fed. The fires must remain alive. You hear the deep sound of wind striking the outer walls. It whistles through narrow openings and circles around the towers. Somewhere above you, a wooden shutter shakes repeatedly against its frame. The castle seems to breathe with the storm. As you enter through the gatehouse, the atmosphere changes, the wind becomes quieter, but the cold remains trapped within the stone. You smell burning wood from nearby fireplaces. You notice the scent of damp wool, old timber, and smoke drifting through the passage. Your hands feel stiff from the journey. A guard closes the heavy gate behind you, and the outside world suddenly feels distant. This is life inside a 1471 castle during Great Winter Storm. The people around you understand that survival depends on preparation. Medieval communities relied heavily on stored grain, salted meat, dried vegetables, and carefully managed supplies during difficult seasons. A castle could not simply send someone into the snow whenever food ran low. The roads might disappear, the rivers might freeze, travellers might become trapped before reaching their destination. So the rooms beneath the castle hold valuable resources. Dark storage areas protect barrels, sacks, and containers from the harsh weather outside. You pass these spaces slowly. The air is cooler here. The smell is different. You notice grain, dried herbs, and the faint scent of old stone. The people living here know every corner of this fortress. They know which rooms stay warmest, which stairs become slippery, and which doors allow the worst drafts. A castle is not just a building. It is a collection of habits. It is a place where hundreds of small actions create survival. You watch a servant hurry across the courtyard carrying firewood. Snow gathers on her hood as she moves quickly toward the main hall. She does not stop. Winter does not allow many pauses. The main hall becomes the heart of the castle during the storm. This large room serves as a gathering place for meals, discussions, celebrations, and important household activities. The fire burns brightly in the centre. You feel the warmth reaching your hands as you approach. It is not perfect warmth. Smoke fills the upper air. The stone floor remains cold. Drafts still enter through gaps around doors and windows, but compared with the frozen courtyard, this room feels welcoming. People gather close together because heat is precious. Medieval families and workers often shared crowded spaces during winter because private comfort was limited. Even nobles with larger chambers still depended on fireplaces, heavy fabrics, and layered clothing to stay warm. A thick wall does not create warmth by itself. It only protects the warmth you create. Historians still argue whether some medieval castles were intentionally designed with winter comfort as a major priority, or whether many features simply developed from defensive needs. The truth may be somewhere between both ideas. A thick wall could stop attackers. It could also reduce the force of winter winds. A narrow window could protect against arrows. It could also prevent precious heat from escaping. Medieval life often balanced survival needs in unexpected ways. As the evening approaches, the storm grows stronger, the sky outside becomes darker, and snow covers more of the landscape. Inside the castle, candles begin appearing along walls and tables. Their small flames create moving shadows across stone surfaces. You hear footsteps echoing through corridors. You hear quiet conversations. You hear the crackling of fires. These sounds become the background music of winter life. A strange little detail from medieval household history is that people sometimes used aromatic plants such as rosemary or herbs to improve the smell of living spaces, especially where smoke, animals, and crowded rooms created unpleasant odours. The castle was not the perfectly clean stone palace imagined in paintings. It was a busy home. It had warmth. It had noise. It had smells. It had ordinary human problems. You walk deeper inside and begin noticing the people rather than the walls. A young servant carefully carries a tray of food. An older guard rubs his hands near a fire. A craftsman repairs a damaged piece of equipment beside a small lamp. Everyone has a role. Everyone contributes something. Outside, the blizzard continues to cover the world. Inside, the castle becomes a small universe surrounded by snow. The people living here do not know exactly how long the storm will last. They only know that the next morning will bring more work, more cold, and more moments requiring patience. Yet there is also comfort. The fire remains, the walls remain, the community remains, and as the wind moves around the towers through the long winter night, you begin to understand that medieval castles were not silent monuments from the past. They were places filled with breathing people, people who worried, people who laughed, people who waited for morning. The morning arrived slowly inside the castle. Though the storm outside makes it difficult to feel the difference between night and day. You wake beneath layers of wool and cloth as the first pale light enters through a narrow opening in the wall. The room remains cold. It always does. You hear wind moving round the towers, but the sound is softer than during the night. The great blizzard has not disappeared. Yet the castle has adjusted to its presence. People are already awake. before sunrise. Servants begin their work because medieval households rarely followed the comfortable schedules of modern life. Tasks began when they were necessary, not when the hour felt convenient. You step into the corridor and feel the cold stone beneath your feet. The air carries the smell of ash from yesterday's fires and the faint scent of fresh bread being prepared somewhere nearby. The castle is waking. A servant walks past you carrying a wooden bucket. Her footsteps are quick because water is heavy and valuable, especially during a winter storm. Another worker carries bundles of cloth toward the sleeping chambers. A stable hand heads outside with a covered lantern. Everyone moves with purpose. The castle does not suddenly become active. It slowly gathers energy. You enter the main hall and see the fire being rebuilt. The flames are not simply decoration. They are one of the most important parts of daily survival. A dying fire means colder rooms, uncomfortable nights, and greater difficulty preparing food. The person responsible for maintaining the hearth has an important position within the household. You watch as logs are arranged carefully, sparks rise into the air, and smoke drifts upward toward the roof. The smell of burning wood fills the room. Your fingers slowly warm as you stand nearby. Around you, breakfast preparations begin. Medieval meals were usually different from the modern idea of 3 equal meals each day. The timing and amount of food depended on social position, available supplies, and local traditions. A noble household might have access to better ingredients, while workers often relied on simpler foods. Bread, porridge, cheese, and preserved foods were common parts of medieval diets. During a blizzard, preservation became especially important. Fresh supplies could not easily arrive. The castle depended on what had already been stored. You walk toward the kitchen area and hear activity increasing. Knives strike wooden boards, pots move over flames, voices call out instructions. The kitchen is warmer than most parts of the castle, but it is also one of the busiest places. The cooks are not only preparing food, they are managing survival. They must decide how much grain to use, how much meat to preserve, and how to make supplies last if the storm continues. A careless decision could create problems later. A careful one could keep everyone comfortable. You notice that medieval castles were not isolated stone boxes where only nobles lived. They contained many different people with different responsibilities. A large castle household could include knights, servants, cooks, cleaners, craftsmen, messengers, and many others. Each person created a small piece of the larger system. The lord of the castle might appear to control everything, but the daily functioning of the fortress depended on countless ordinary workers. Without them, the grand halls would become cold and empty. Without them, the impressive towers would lose their purpose. You leave the kitchen and enter a smaller courtyard area protected by the walls. Snow covers much of the ground, but workers have already cleared paths between important buildings. The work begins again every day. Snow does not care about schedules. It covers the same places repeatedly. You see a young worker pushing snow away from a doorway. His boots sink into the white ground, and his breath appears like a small cloud in the freezing air. The task looks simple. It is not. A blocked entrance could make movement difficult. A dangerous path could lead to injuries. A frozen water source could create serious challenges. Medieval people understood their environment through constant observation. They noticed changes in weather, animal behavior, and the condition of their surroundings. They had fewer tools than people today, but they developed strong practical knowledge. You walk toward the stables and hear the sounds of horses shifting inside. The animals stamp their feet against the floor, creating a steady rhythm. The smell of hay and animals fills the air. The stable is warmer than outside because living creatures create heat. Horses are especially important within a medieval castle. They are transportation, status symbols, and valuable working animals. A healthy horse means messages can travel, supplies can move, people can leave when roads become safe again. During a severe storm, caring for animals becomes just as important as caring for people. A hungry horse cannot serve its purpose. A neglected animal weakens the entire household. As the morning continues, guards change positions along the walls. Some return from the night watch, their faces tired from hours in the freezing wind. Others prepare to take their place. The routine continues. You notice something interesting about castle life. Even during extraordinary events, people often continue ordinary habits. They eat, they work, they repair things. They complain about the cold. They find small moments of comfort. A medieval storm was frightening, but it was also part of life. Historians still debate how much time medieval people spent indoors during extreme winter conditions, because written records often focus on rulers, wars, and major events rather than everyday routines. The quiet experiences of ordinary people are harder to discover, yet traces remain. Buildings, tools, household records, and archaeological discoveries reveal a world where people adapted constantly to their surroundings. You return to the main hall as afternoon approaches. The fire has grown stronger, and more people gather around it. Someone repairs clothing, someone sharpens a tool, someone tells a story from before the storm arrived. The castle feels less like a fortress and more like a village gathered under one roof. Outside, the blizzard continues its slow attack against the walls. Inside, life continues with surprising determination. The people here cannot control the weather. They cannot command the snow to stop, but they can prepare another meal. They can carry another log. They can repair another broken object. They can help one another through another cold day. And within these ancient stone walls, that is how the castle survives, not through strength alone, through routine. The storm continues outside, but inside the castle, the rhythm of life becomes familiar after spending time among the servants, guards, and workers. You begin to notice something important. The castle is not only made of walls, it is made of rooms. Each room has a purpose. Each space carries the marks of the people who use it. You walk through a narrow passage where the morning light barely reaches. The walls are thick, built from carefully placed stone blocks that have protected generations of inhabitants. Your hand brushes against the surface. The stone feels rough and cold. It holds the winter chill like a memory. Medieval castles were designed primarily for defense, but they were also homes. The people inside needed places to sleep, eat, work, pray, store supplies, and gather together. A castle had to serve many purposes at once. A fortress needed to withstand danger. A household needed somewhere to live. Those two ideas existed together behind every doorway. You first enter the chambers belonging to the castle's noble family. These rooms are more private than the busy areas below. They are still not what you might imagine as luxurious. The walls remain stone. The air remains cool. The furniture is limited compared with modern homes. Yet these chambers contain signs of comfort. Heavy fabrics hang around sleeping areas to block drafts. Wooden chests store clothing and personal belongings. Candles provide light during the long winter evenings. You notice the smell of wool, beeswax, and burning oil. The atmosphere feels quieter here. A noble person might have more space, but winter still reaches everyone. Cold does not completely respect social rank. The fireplace offers warmth, but the heat spreads slowly through large stone rooms. Even wealthy families needed layers of clothing and thick blankets to remain comfortable. You see a wooden bed positioned away from the coldest wall. Above it hangs fabric that creates a small protected area. This type of arrangement helped reduce drafts. Privacy was also different in the medieval world. Many modern ideas about personal space did not exist in the same way. Rooms were often shared, and household members moved through common areas constantly. Even important people lived surrounded by servants and attendants. A castle was rarely silent. Footsteps filled the corridors. Voices travelled through open doorways. Smoke moved through the air. Life overlapped. You leave the noble chambers and enter the sleeping areas used by others in the household. Here, the differences are clear. The rooms are simpler, the furniture is practical. Several people may share the same space. Servants often slept close to their workplace because they needed to respond quickly when duties called. A person working near the kitchens might sleep nearby. A guard might rest close to the entrance. A stable worker might remain close to the animals. The castle organized people according to their responsibilities. Your attention turns toward the small details. A wooden bowl sits beside a sleeping area. A pair of worn shoes rests near a wall. A folded cloak hangs from a peg. These objects seem ordinary, but they reveal daily life more clearly than grand stories about kings and battles. History often remembers powerful figures, but homes reveal everyone. You move toward a smaller room where craftsmen work during the storm. The sound of tools echoes softly through the chamber. A metalworker repairs equipment. A tailor fixes damaged clothing. A carpenter shapes pieces of wood. The castle contains many forms of skilled labor. Winter creates more work, not less. Clothing must be repaired. Tools must remain functional. Furniture must be maintained. A broken item cannot always be replaced quickly when snow blocks travel routes. You smell fresh cut wood mixed with smoke from a nearby fire. The room feels active, warm, human. A curious detail from medieval life is that some castles contained private chambers called guardrobes, which were early forms of toilets built into walls. These spaces were practical but could also influence the structure of the castle itself. Historians still study how these features were designed and how effectively they handled daily needs. The medieval world was often more organized than people imagine. It was not simply chaos inside stone walls. People created solutions using the materials and knowledge available to them. You continue exploring and reach a small room used for storage. Here, the atmosphere changes again. The light is weaker, the air is cooler. Wooden containers line the walls. Inside are objects needed for survival. Cloth, tools, food containers, household supplies. The castle's storage rooms are like a hidden memory of preparation. Every item has a reason for being there. A winter storm tests these supplies. A careless household might struggle. A prepared one can endure. You think about the people who filled these rooms before the snow arrived. They did not know exactly how severe the blizzard would become. They could only make careful decisions based on experience. How much grain should be stored? How much firewood would be enough? How many animals could be supported through winter? These questions shaped medieval life. Preparation was not an abstract idea. It was the difference between comfort and hardship. As evening approaches, you return to the main hall. The rooms you have explored now feel connected. The chambers provide rest, the kitchens provide food, the workshops provide repairs, the storage rooms provide security. Every space supports another. The castle functions like a living body. The walls protect it. The rooms serve different purposes. The people keep everything moving. Outside, snow continues covering the landscape. Inside, candlelight moves across the stone surfaces. The castle remains surrounded by winter, but within its walls, hundreds of small routines continue. You sit near the fire and listen. The storm sounds distant now. The voices around you become softer. The castle is still cold. It is still old. It is still made of stone. But tonight, it feels like home. The morning light barely reaches the castle courtyard as another day of the great blizzard begins. You wake to the familiar sounds of winter life continuing around you. The wind presses against the walls. The fires crackle inside the halls. The footsteps of workers move through the corridors. Everything depends on one simple element: fire. Without it, the castle would become a much harsher place. You follow the smell of smoke through the passageways and enter the area where firewood is prepared. The air feels warmer here, though the stone floor still carries the cold of winter. Wood is stacked carefully against the walls. Every piece matters, every branch, log, and bundle represents hours of labour. A castle cannot simply create warmth. It must gather, store, and protect the materials needed to produce it. You look at the workers carrying logs toward the main hall. Their hands are rough from constant effort, and their clothing carries the scent of smoke from previous fires. They understand that maintaining the hearth is a daily responsibility. The fire must be watched. The fire must be fed. The fire must never be forgotten. In medieval households, the central hearth was one of the most important features of everyday life. It provided heat, light, cooking ability, and a place where people naturally gathered. The hearth was not just an object, it was the centre of the home. You stand near the main fireplace and feel the difference between the warm air close to the flames and the cold atmosphere farther away. The warmth reaches your face first, then your hands, then slowly the rest of your body. The stone walls absorb much of the heat, reminding you that a castle was built for strength rather than comfort. The people living here have learned to work with the building, not against it. They hang fabrics, they close shutters, they arrange furniture carefully. Small choices make winter easier. A servant places another log onto the fire. Sparks rise upward and disappear into the darkness above. The sound is gentle, almost peaceful. Yet keeping these fires alive requires constant attention. Wood is heavy. Transporting it through snow is exhausting. The castle needs a reliable supply, especially during a storm when outside movement becomes dangerous. Records from medieval estates often mention large quantities of firewood being collected before winter arrived. These preparations were essential because cold weather could last for months, and forests might become difficult to reach during severe conditions. You imagine the months before this blizzard. Workers cutting trees, carts carrying timber, families preparing supplies. All those efforts now appear inside this single burning hearth. Winter survival begins long before the first snow falls. You walk toward a smaller room where servants warm themselves between tasks. A few people sit near a smaller fire, rubbing their hands and speaking quietly. The room smells of wool, ash, and warm drink. A simple feeling fills the space, relief. Medieval people did not experience winter only as hardship. They also created moments of comfort within it. A warm corner, a shared meal, a conversation beside a fire. These small pleasures became valuable during difficult seasons. You notice that the fire changes the entire atmosphere of the castle. Without flames, the rooms would feel empty and lifeless. With flames, the stone seems less severe. Shadows move across the walls, faces become visible, voices become softer. The castle becomes a place of gathering. A small detail from medieval domestic life is that some households used heated stones, wrapped in cloth to provide extra warmth while sleeping. These simple methods show how people searched for practical solutions when large rooms were difficult to heat. You later walk toward the kitchen fire, where a different kind of activity surrounds the flames. Here, heat is used for survival in another way. Food preparation. Large pots hang above the fire. Steam rises into the air. The smell of cooking fills the room. The cooks carefully manage temperatures because wasting fuel would create problems. A fire used for cooking must be controlled. Too weak, and food takes too long, too strong, and supplies may be wasted. Every flame has a purpose. You watch as workers move between different fires throughout the castle. A fireplace warms a chamber. A kitchen fire prepares meals. A small flame provides light for a craftsman. A torch guides someone through a dark corridor. Fire appears everywhere. It connects every part of castle life. As the afternoon passes, the storm outside becomes louder again. Snow strikes the narrow windows, and the wind pushes against the wooden shutters. Inside, the people continue their routines. The fires continue burning. This simple fact brings comfort. Researchers continue to discuss how efficiently medieval castles could actually retain heat during winter, because surviving buildings vary greatly in design, location, and later changes. Some may have been warmer than expected, while others remained extremely difficult environments. The answer depends on many factors: the size of the room, the quality of construction, the availability of fuel, the habits of the people living inside. You return to the main hall as evening arrives. The largest fire burns brightly, surrounded by people finishing their daily work. Someone repairs clothing near the flames. Someone prepares tomorrow's supplies. Someone quietly watches the snowfall beyond the window. The storm remains powerful, but the castle remains alive. The fire has become more than warmth. It has become a symbol of patience. Every night, someone must protect it. Every morning, someone must rebuild it. The flame continues because people continue. You sit near the hearth and listen to the soft sounds around you, the crackling wood, the quiet voices, the distant wind. Outside, the blizzard covers the world. Inside, a small circle of warmth survives, and for everyone within these ancient walls, that is enough. The smell of warm bread reaches you before you enter the kitchen. It moves through the stone corridors like a gentle invitation, mixing with the scent of burning wood, herbs, and simmering food. After days of heavy snowfall, the kitchen has become one of the busiest places inside the castle. Here, survival is transformed into meals. You step closer and feel the change immediately. The air is warmer than the rest of the fortress. Steam rises from large pots, and the sounds of chopping, stirring, and conversation fill the room. The kitchen never truly sleeps during difficult weather. People must eat. Fires must remain active. Supplies must be carefully managed. A castle without food is only an empty collection of walls. You watch the cooks move with practiced confidence. They know where every container is stored, how much grain remains, and which food should be used first. Their knowledge is built from experience. A medieval kitchen depends on organization. The cooks are not simply preparing meals, they are managing resources. During the 15th century, large households often kept detailed accounts of supplies such as grain, livestock, salt, and drink. These records helped noble estates understand what was available and how long resources could last. Inside this castle, every barrel and sack carries importance. You notice several wooden containers placed along the walls. Some hold grain, some contain dried ingredients, others protect preserved foods from moisture and cold. The kitchen workers understand that winter is a test of preparation. Fresh food is difficult to obtain during a major storm. The road outside has disappeared beneath snow. Travellers cannot arrive easily. Merchants cannot simply appear at the gate with new supplies. The castle must depend on itself. You watch as a cook removes a covered pot from the fire. The steam rises around her face, and the scent of vegetables, meat, and herbs spreads through the room. The meal is not extravagant. It does not need to be. In winter, warmth and nourishment matter most. You see bread being prepared nearby. Dough is shaped by hand, then placed near the heat. Bread is one of the most important foods in medieval Europe. For many people, it provides a major part of daily energy. The type of bread depends on wealth and location. The finest versions may use refined flour, while ordinary households often rely on darker grains. The difference reveals social divisions even at the dinner table. You move toward the area where drinks are prepared. A warm liquid fills wooden cups, carrying the scent of herbs. People gather around when food is ready. Meals are not only about eating, they are moments of connection. Workers exchange stories. Families discuss the weather. Servants briefly rest from their duties. The kitchen creates a sense of community. A small detail from medieval food culture is that some cooks use spices not only for flavor, but also as a way to display wealth. Rare ingredients could represent status because they traveled long distances before reaching European kitchens. You imagine a merchant carrying small amounts of valuable spices across dangerous routes, eventually bringing them into wealthy households. Even during a freezing winter inside a castle, distant parts of the world could appear through taste and smell. The kitchen connects this isolated fortress to a much larger world. You notice another important feature. Nothing is wasted. Bones, scraps, and leftover ingredients may be used in different ways. Medieval households needed careful habits because food production required significant effort. Growing crops, raising animals, preserving supplies. All of these activities required time and labor. Waste represented lost work. The cooks understand this better than anyone. They know every ingredient has a history. The grain came from fields, the animals came from farms, the herbs came from gardens or trade. A meal is the final step of a much longer process. As the storm continues, the kitchen becomes even more important. People spend more time indoors. The demand for warm food increases. The workers carrying supplies must move carefully because the courtyard becomes slippery with ice and snow. You see a servant enter carrying another basket. Snow covers his clothing. His cheeks are red from the cold. He places the basket down and quickly moves closer to the fire. The kitchen welcomes him. The kitchen welcomes everyone, in many ways. This room represents the heart of the castle. The great hall may represent authority, the towers may represent strength, but the kitchen represents daily life. It is where people gather because they need something basic: food, warmth, company. The storm outside creates isolation, but the kitchen creates connection. You listen to the sounds around you, the bubbling of pots, the movement of wooden spoons, the crackle of flames, the quiet conversations between workers. These sounds create a peaceful rhythm. Researchers have found that medieval diet varied greatly depending on region, wealth, and season, meaning there was no single medieval menu. A noble household in one area could eat very differently from a farming family elsewhere. Even within the same castle, different people experienced food in different ways. The lord might receive better portions, servants might eat simpler meals, yet everyone depended on the same kitchen system. You watch as the evening meal begins. People carry bowls into the hall. The fire glows against the stone walls. The smell of cooked food spreads through the room. For a moment, the blizzard feels distant. The people inside are not thinking about the endless snow. They are thinking about the warmth in front of them, the meal before them, the people beside them. Winter remains outside, but inside the castle kitchen, life continues. You sit quietly and observe. The medieval world is often remembered through battles and rulers, but here you see something more ordinary: a cook preparing dinner, a servant carrying supplies, a family sharing a meal, a group of people finding comfort during a difficult season. The castle survives not only because of its walls. It survives because someone keeps the fire burning and someone keeps the kitchen working. And tonight, beneath the heavy winter sky, those simple actions are enough. The storm has now settled into the rhythm of castle life. Snow continues covering the fields beyond the walls, but inside the fortress. Hundreds of small tasks continue from morning until night. You begin to notice the people who rarely appear in stories about medieval castles. They are not kings, they are not knights, they are not the figures painted in grand portraits. They are the workers who keep everything moving. You walk through the lower corridors and see servants carrying baskets, cleaning rooms, repairing objects, and preparing supplies. Their movements are quiet, but their importance is impossible to ignore. A castle may belong to a lord, but it depends on many hands. The walls protect the household, the workers maintain it. You pass a servant carrying fresh rushes toward the main hall. The old floor covering needs to be replaced because daily activity brings dirt, moisture, and debris inside. The task seems simple. It is not. A large household creates constant work. Floors must be maintained, clothing must be cleaned, supplies must be organized, fires must be watched. The smallest duties prevent larger problems. You smell dried herbs scattered among the floor coverings. Medieval households sometimes use plants to improve the atmosphere of living spaces and reduce unpleasant odors in crowded rooms. The castle is not perfectly clean. It is not a quiet museum. It is a living place. People move through it every hour. You continue deeper into the servants' areas and notice how different the atmosphere feels compared with the noble chambers. The rooms are smaller, the furniture is simpler, the spaces are designed around function. A servant's life is shaped by responsibility. They must be ready when needed. They often sleep close to their workplace. Their days follow the needs of the household. A person working in the kitchen wakes early. A stable worker begins before sunrise. A messenger prepares whenever news must travel. The castle's schedule belongs to everyone. You enter a small workshop where clothing repairs are taking place. Winter creates endless challenges for fabric and clothing. Cold weather requires layers. Layers become damaged through constant use. Needles move through cloth as workers carefully repair worn areas. The sound is quiet, almost invisible. Yet without these repairs, people would struggle against the cold. Medieval clothing was valuable because producing fabric required enormous effort. Wool, linen, and other materials involved farming, processing, spinning, and weaving before becoming finished garments. A simple cloak represented many hours of work. You look at the hands repairing it. Those hands are preserving warmth. A small detail from medieval households is that clothing was often reused and altered repeatedly because fabric was too valuable to discard easily. Older garments could be repaired, resized, or transformed into different items. Nothing was quickly forgotten. Everything had another purpose. You move toward the stables and hear another group of workers beginning their duties. The smell changes immediately. Hay, animals, the warmth of living creatures. Stable workers are essential during winter because horses require constant care. They must be fed. They must be cleaned. They must be protected from freezing conditions. A castle's horses are not simply transportation. They are part of the household's security and communication. A message cannot travel without a healthy horse. A supply journey cannot begin without prepared animals. You watch a stable worker brush snow from a horse's coat. The animal shifts its weight and releases a cloud of warm breath into the cold air. The worker speaks softly. Animals respond to patience. The relationship between humans and animals inside medieval castles was practical, but it was also personal. Many people spent more time with animals than with distant members of noble families. You return toward the main building and notice another group working near the entrance. These are the people responsible for receiving deliveries and managing movement through the gate. During a blizzard, their duties become more difficult. Every visitor must be examined carefully. Every arrival brings questions. Who is approaching? What do they need? Can they safely enter? The castle cannot ignore the outside world completely. Even during a storm, communication remains important. Records from medieval castles show that household management involved many specialized roles, including people responsible for supplies, storage, animals, and domestic organization. The image of a castle with only soldiers and nobles misses most of the reality. A fortress was also a workplace. You notice how the workers know each other's routines. A kitchen servant carries supplies without needing instructions. A stable worker prepares equipment automatically. A cleaner knows which rooms require attention first. Experience creates efficiency. The castle operates through cooperation. Researchers continue examining how much freedom ordinary castle workers had in their daily lives, because written sources often describe duties more clearly than personal feelings. Surviving evidence shows their responsibilities, but their private experiences are harder to understand. You wonder what they thought during this great blizzard. Were they frightened? Were they calm? Did they see the storm as a danger or simply another difficult winter day? Perhaps the answer changed from person to person. A young servant might remember the cold. An experienced worker might remember the teamwork. An older person might remember another storm from many years before. Everyone carries their own version of history. As evening arrives, the workers slowly complete their final tasks. The kitchen prepares tomorrow's supplies. The fires are checked. The animals are settled. The doors are secured. The castle becomes quieter. You stand in the corridor and watch people disappear into their rooms. The nobles rest. The guards continue watching. The servants finally take a moment for themselves. Their work may not be celebrated in songs. Their names may not appear in royal records. Yet without them, the castle would not survive a single winter. The great walls are impressive. The towers are powerful. But the true strength of the fortress comes from ordinary people performing ordinary tasks with remarkable patience. Outside, the blizzard continues. Inside, the hidden workers keep the medieval world alive. The storm has grown stronger during the night, and the castle walls now carry the full weight of the winter wind. You wake before sunrise and hear a different sound above the sleeping chambers. Footsteps, slow footsteps, careful footsteps. The guards have begun another watch. You climb the narrow staircase toward the battlements, following the faint glow of a lantern moving ahead of you. The stone steps are uneven beneath your boots, worn smooth by countless people who have walked this path before you. The air becomes colder with every step. The smell of smoke from the lower halls fades away. The scent of frozen air replaces it. When you reach the top, the wind immediately surrounds you. It pushes against your cloak and touches every exposed part of your face. You understand why the watch on the walls is considered one of the hardest duties inside the castle. The view is beautiful. It is also dangerous. Below you, the landscape has almost disappeared beneath snow. Fields, roads, and distant buildings are covered by a white layer that makes familiar places difficult to recognize. The castle stands alone. The guards beside you stare into the distance. They are searching for movement, a traveller, a messenger, a group approaching through the storm, anything unusual. Their responsibility is simple to describe but difficult to perform. They must see what others cannot. You notice the guard's clothing. Several layers protect him from the cold, but no fabric can completely defeat winter. His gloves are thick, his boots are heavy. His cloak moves constantly in the wind. Still, the cold reaches him. It reaches everyone. A guard on the wall during a blizzard experiences the weather directly. There is no thick roof above him and no warm fire nearby. Only stone, wind, snow. Yet he remains. Medieval castles depended heavily on watch systems. Towers and walls allowed defenders to observe surrounding areas and respond quickly to possible threats. The height of the battlements provided an advantage, but during severe weather, that same height exposed guards to harsh conditions. You look along the wall and see small openings built into the stone. These features allowed defenders to observe and protect the castle while reducing their exposure. The architecture reveals the constant balance between safety and comfort. A castle was designed for conflict, but people still had to live inside it. The guard beside you adjusts his position and stamps his feet to restore warmth. He's learned the small habits needed for survival. Movement helps. Standing still makes the cold worse. Attention must remain sharp. The mind can become tired before the body. You imagine the long hours of watching a quiet, snowy landscape. Nothing happens. Then something might happen. That uncertainty creates its own challenge. The guard cannot relax completely. A curious feature of medieval defences was the use of signal systems. Castles often relied on horns, bells, fires, or flags to communicate warnings across distances. In a world without modern communication, sound and sight carried messages. A single signal from a tower could change the activity of an entire settlement. You listen carefully. The wind dominates everything. It moves around the towers and creates strange sounds through gaps in the stone. Sometimes it sounds like voices. Sometimes it sounds like distant footsteps. The guards know not to trust every sound. Winter creates illusions. Snow changes familiar landscapes. Darkness hides details. Experience becomes important. You look beyond the walls and imagine the road that normally connects the castle to the outside world. Today, it is invisible. The people outside have become distant. The castle has become its own small world. The guards are the connection between these two spaces. They represent the boundary between safety and uncertainty. You notice another guard arriving to replace someone who has finished his watch. The exchange is simple. A few words, a brief update, a passing of responsibility. The first guard walks away slowly toward warmth. The second takes his place. The system continues. No ceremony, no celebration, just routine. Life in a medieval fortress often depended on repeated actions performed correctly every day. A door locked at the right time, a fire maintained properly, a guard watching carefully. Small responsibilities protected the entire community. The exact experiences of medieval guards during extreme winters are difficult to reconstruct because surviving documents usually focus on military events rather than personal feelings or daily discomfort. The records tell us where guards stood. They tell us their duties. They rarely tell us what they thought while staring into a frozen landscape for hours. You wonder about those silent moments. Did they think about their families? Did they remember warmer seasons? Did they count the hours until relief arrived? Perhaps they did. Even people living centuries ago shared the same simple hopes: warmth, rest, safety. You remain on the battlement for a while longer. The castle below begins waking. Smoke rises from chimneys. Servants move through courtyards. The kitchen begins preparing food. Life continues beneath the watchful eyes of the guards. From this height, you see the entire fortress differently. The walls are not just stone. They are a shelter. The towers are not just structures. They are places where people stand and wait. The gates are not just entrances. They are the connection between inside and outside. The storm continues across the land, but the castle remains steady. And above the frozen world, the guards continue their quiet watch. After leaving the cold battlements behind, you return through the narrow passageways toward the warmer parts of the castle. The wind becomes quieter as thick stone walls surround you again. Your hands slowly regain feeling. Your footsteps echo through the corridors. The sounds of the guards fade behind you. Now you enter another part of castle life, one shaped by rank, tradition, and responsibility, the noble household, inside a medieval castle. The lord and lady did not simply spend their days resting in comfort. Their lives were filled with duties that affected everyone living within the fortress. They managed land, they received visitors, they settled disagreements, they organized supplies, they represented authority. You walk toward the private chambers where members of the noble family begin their mourning. These rooms are quieter than the busy areas used by servants, but they are still connected to the larger household. A servant opens a wooden shutter, allowing a thin line of winter light to enter. The room remains dim. Candles flicker against the walls. The smell of beeswax mixes with the scent of wool clothing and burning wood. The lady of the castle prepares for the day with the assistance of attendants. Clothing requires time and care. especially during winter when layers are necessary for warmth. A wealthy person may own finer fabrics, but winter creates difficulties for everyone. Cold air finds every weakness. Drafts enter through small openings. Stone floors remain chilled. Even luxury has limits. You notice a large wooden chest near the wall. Inside are carefully stored fabrics, garments, and personal belongings. For medieval nobles, possessions were not only about beauty, they represented wealth, family connections, and social position. Clothing could show status immediately. The quality of fabric, the colours used, and the decorations placed upon garments all communicated information about the wearer. A simple glance could reveal someone's place in the social order. You move into the great hall, where the lord of the castle meets with household officials. The room feels different from the private chambers. It is public. It is active. It is a place where authority is displayed. The lord sits at the centre because the arrangement of space itself communicates importance. People approach him. Messages are delivered. Decisions are discussed. During the storm, these responsibilities become even more important. A winter crisis requires organisation. Food supplies must be monitored. Repairs must be arranged. Workers must be directed. The castle cannot function without leadership. By the late medieval period, noble households across Europe often operated with complex systems of management. Important estates relied on officials who handled finances, records, property, and daily administration. Behind the image of a noble ruler stood many people organising the details. You watch a household official examine written notes beside the fire. Records are valuable because memory alone cannot manage a large estate. Lists of supplies, payments, deliveries, responsibilities. These documents help keep order. A curious aspect of medieval noble life is that large households could resemble small governments. A castle was not only a residence, but also a centre where decisions affecting surrounding communities were made. The people inside these walls influenced the lives of farmers, craftsmen, and travellers beyond the gate. You return to the noble chambers later in the afternoon and observe quieter moments. The lady reads. A family member practices writing. Someone repairs a personal item. These scenes feel surprisingly ordinary. The medieval world contained moments of boredom, patience, and routine just like any other period of history. People were not constantly involved in dramatic events. Most days were made of small activities. You notice how the storm changes noble life. Visitors cannot arrive easily. Travel plans must be delayed. Outdoor activities become limited. The castle becomes more inward-looking. Entertainment becomes important. Stories are shared. Music may be performed. Games are played. Conversation fills the hours. Winter encourages people to gather. The exact role of leisure among medieval nobles is difficult to measure because surviving records often describe ceremonies and important events more than everyday relaxation. Private moments rarely received the same attention as political matters. Yet people have always needed rest. They have always searched for ways to pass long evenings. You imagine the noble family sitting near the fire after sunset. The flames move gently. The room glows with warm light. Outside, snow continues falling. Inside, conversation replaces the sounds of travel and activity. A person living in a castle might appear powerful from the outside, but the storm reminds everyone of shared human limits. The lord cannot command the snow to stop. The lady cannot force the roads to reopen. Rank provides advantages. It does not provide control over nature. This creates an interesting balance. The noble family holds authority over people. The weather holds authority over everyone. You walk through the hall once more and notice how different groups now share the same space. A guard stands near the entrance. A servant carries a tray. A noble official discusses supplies. A craftsman repairs an object nearby. The social order remains visible. Everyone has a position. Everyone has responsibilities. Yet the blizzard has placed them together inside the same walls. The castle feels smaller during winter. The outside world disappears. The people inside become more connected. As night falls, candles appear throughout the hall. Their light reflects across wooden tables and stone surfaces. The noble household prepares for another evening inside the fortress. The storm continues, the fires continue, the routines continue. You sit quietly near the edge of the room and watch the scene unfold. A medieval castle is often imagined as a place of power and conflict. Tonight, you see another side. You see a household. You see people managing uncertainty. You see a community trying to remain comfortable in a world shaped by snow and stone. And as the wind moves beyond the walls, the noble family settles into another winter night, protected not only by the strength of the castle, but by the countless efforts of everyone inside. The morning arrives beneath a pale grey sky, and the castle begins another quiet day surrounded by snow. You have watched guards protect the walls, servants maintain the household, and nobles manage their responsibilities. Now you notice another part of castle life, the children. Their world exists within the same stone walls, yet they experience the fortress differently. To them, the castle is not only a place of duty and survival, it is also a place of curiosity. You hear small footsteps moving through the corridors. Their voices rise above the usual sounds of work, creating moments of energy inside the old fortress. The sound feels different, lighter. The children move between rooms where adults are busy, carefully learning where they can play and where they must remain quiet. A castle is a complicated environment for a young person. There are dangerous stairs, heavy doors, open fires, cold stone floors. Children must learn the rules of the household from an early age. You follow them toward a warmer chamber where they spend part of their time. The room is simple compared with modern ideas of childhood spaces. There are no brightly decorated rooms filled with separate toys. Instead, children use what is available: small wooden objects, pieces of cloth, simple games, stories. Imagination becomes one of the most valuable forms of entertainment. You watch a child holding a carved wooden figure. It is a small object, carefully made, but it represents an entire world of possibilities. Another child creates a game using everyday items found inside the castle. A small piece of wood becomes a tool, a piece of fabric becomes a costume, a simple object becomes something new. Medieval childhood was shaped by the environment around them. Children learned by watching. They copied adults, they practiced skills. They absorbed the habits of the household. In noble families, education often began early. Boys and girls might learn different skills depending on their expected roles. Social position and family traditions, reading, religious instruction, manners, household management, and practical abilities could all become part of their upbringing. You see an older family member guiding a child through a lesson near the fire. The child listens carefully while holding a small writing tool. The process is slow, the room is quiet. Learning requires patience. A curious feature of medieval education is that learning did not always happen in formal schools. Many children received instruction at home, through religious communities, or through practical training connected to their future responsibilities. Knowledge travelled through relationships, a parent, a teacher, a skilled worker, an experienced relative. The castle itself became a classroom. You walk through the corridor and see children observing the activities around them. One watches a servant preparing food. Another observes a craftsman repairing equipment. Another listens to conversations between adults. They are constantly learning how the world functions. The castle teaches without needing a written lesson. Every sound carries information. Every task reveals something. The smell of the kitchen teaches them about food. The sound of metalwork teaches them about tools. The sight of guards teaches them about protection. Their surroundings shape their understanding. Outside, the blizzard continues limiting movement. The children cannot freely explore fields, villages, or forests. Yet the castle provides its own landscape. Long corridors become places of discovery. Courtyards become winter playgrounds. Stairways become adventures. Snow itself becomes something to study. You watch them approach a window and look outside. The world beyond the walls seems mysterious. Trees are covered. Paths are hidden. The familiar landscape has transformed overnight. For children living centuries ago, weather was not just a background condition. It changed their entire experience of the world. You notice a small group gathering near the fire in the afternoon. An older person tells stories while children listen. Storytelling was an important part of medieval culture before modern entertainment. Spoken stories carried history, lessons, imagination, and shared memories. A winter evening beside a fire created the perfect setting. The flames move gently. The room becomes quieter. The children listen. The storm provides a natural pause from everyday activity. Researchers continue exploring how medieval children understood their own childhood because personal writings from young people are rare. Most surviving descriptions come from adults, making it difficult to know exactly how children felt about their experiences. Were they frightened by the storm? Were they fascinated by it? Did they see the castle as a prison or a place of wonder? The answer likely depended on the child. A child born inside the fortress might feel completely at home. A child arriving during the storm might find the walls intimidating. You imagine one young person looking across the snowy courtyard and wondering about the world beyond the gate. Someday, the roads will reopen, the snow will disappear, travellers will return. But tonight, the castle is the entire universe. As evening approaches, the children become quieter, their energy fades. They return to warmer rooms and prepare for another cold night. The same walls that protect soldiers and nobles also protect these young lives. The castle is still a place of responsibility. It is still a place of work. But through the eyes of children, it becomes something more. It becomes a place of memories. Years later, they may not remember every detail of the Great Blizzard. They may forget the exact number of days the snow covered the land. They may forget the names of everyone who carried supplies. But they may remember the warmth of the fire, the sound of stories, the feeling of being surrounded by family and familiar faces. Inside the ancient fortress, childhood continues quietly beneath the winter sky. The storm remains outside. The castle remains strong, and within its walls, young voices remind everyone that life is not only about enduring hardship, It is also about discovering moments of happiness. The storm continues beyond the castle walls, but inside the fortress, another kind of world unfolds. You have seen how people worked, rested, guarded, and learned within these ancient rooms. Now you begin to notice something deeper. The castle is not only a place of physical survival, it is also a place of belief. In the year 1471, faith touches almost every part of daily life. The changing seasons, unexpected storms, illness, harvests, and uncertain journeys are all experienced through a world where religion provides explanations, comfort, and structure. You walk toward the small chapel inside the castle walls. The corridor becomes quieter. The busy sounds of the kitchen disappear behind you. The smell of smoke is replaced by the scent of candles and old wood. The air feels calmer inside the chapel. A few people gather in the morning light. The room is simple compared with the grand halls of wealthy churches, but it carries a special importance for those living inside the fortress. A candle burns near the altar. Its small flame moves gently. The sound of quiet prayers fills the room. People come here not only during celebrations, they come during uncertainty, and a great blizzard creates plenty of uncertainty. You sit near the back and observe the different people gathered together. A guard who spent the night watching the walls, a servant who carried supplies through the snow, a noble family member concerned about the safety of the household. Their positions are different. Their worries are often similar. Everyone wants protection. Everyone hopes for better weather. During the medieval period, Christianity shaped many aspects of European society, including calendars, festivals, education, and ideas about morality. Religious life was not separate from ordinary activities. It was woven into everyday routines. The ringing of bells could mark time. Feast days could influence meals. Prayers could begin and end important tasks. You notice how the chapel creates a sense of order inside the chaos of the storm. Outside, the weather is unpredictable. Inside, familiar rituals continue. The people know what comes next. They know the words. They know the actions. These traditions provide stability. A person cannot control the wind. A person cannot command the snow to stop falling. But a person can light a candle. A person can offer a prayer. A person can gather with others. These actions create comfort. You leave the chapel and enter a corridor where servants have placed small religious objects near doorways and private areas. Some people believe these objects provide protection. Others see them as reminders of faith and hope. The medieval world often combined religious belief with practical experience. A farmer could understand the importance of weather patterns, while also praying for a successful harvest. A sailor could understand the sea while seeking divine protection before a journey. Knowledge and belief existed together. You return to the main hall in the evening and notice how stories change during the long winter nights. When travel stops and work slows, people share memories and explanations. Some stories describe saints, others describe strange events, mysterious signs, or warnings from nature. The darkness outside encourages imagination. A loud sound from the roof might become a mysterious event. A shadow moving through a corridor might inspire a story. The human mind searches for meaning, especially during uncertain times. A lesser-known aspect of medieval winter life is that certain seasonal customs mixed religious practices with older local traditions. Communities sometimes carried beliefs from earlier generations into Christian celebrations, creating a complex blend of ideas. The castle reflects this mixture. Official ceremonies may happen in the chapel. Private beliefs may appear in small household habits. Not every tradition leaves a clear written record. The exact feelings of medieval people towards storms and natural events are difficult to understand, because many surviving sources describe official religious practices rather than personal thoughts. A written prayer can tell you what people said. It does not always reveal what they secretly feared. You imagine someone standing beside the window during the darkest hours of the storm. Perhaps they wonder when the snow will stop. Perhaps they think about family members outside the castle. Perhaps they remember previous winters. Human emotions do not change as much as the centuries between us might suggest. People still seek reassurance when facing things beyond their control. As night deepens, the chapel becomes quieter. The last candle burns lower. The footsteps in the corridor become softer. The castle settles into darkness, yet the beliefs carried by the people continue. A prayer whispered before sleep, a blessing offered before a journey, a moment of silence beside a fire. These small actions connect the people inside the castle to something larger than themselves. The blizzard remains powerful, the walls remain cold, the roads remain hidden beneath snow. But the people inside have something that helps them endure. They have community, they have tradition, they have hope. You return to your place near the fire and listen to the sounds of the fortress at night. The wind moves around the towers, the flames create gentle shadows, the castle rests. Tomorrow will bring more work, more snow, more waiting. But tonight, inside this 1471 fortress, the people find peace in familiar rituals and quiet moments of reflection. The storm surrounds them, faith remains within them, and together they continue through the winter. The morning begins with a different kind of sound, not footsteps on stone, not voices in the great hall, not the crackling of a fire. You hear animals, a horse shifting its weight, a dog moving across straw, the quiet noises of creatures that share the castle with the people living inside. You follow the sound toward the stables, leaving the warmer rooms behind. The air becomes colder as you approach the outer areas of the fortress. The smell changes first. Hay, wood, leather, animal warmth. The stable feels different from the rest of the castle. It is not elegant, and it is not designed for ceremony. It is practical. It is necessary. During a great blizzard, the animals inside the castle become part of the household's survival. You step inside and immediately feel the difference between the freezing courtyard and the sheltered stable. The horses stand close together. Their breath appears in the cold air. Their bodies create warmth. A stable worker moves carefully between them, checking their condition and bringing fresh feed. His hands are busy. His attention is constant. Animals cannot explain what they need. The worker must observe. A change in behavior, a lack of energy, a problem with movement. Experience becomes the language between humans and animals. Horses are among the most valuable animals in a medieval castle. They carry riders, transport goods, and allow messages to travel between distant places. A knight without a horse loses much of his ability to move. A messenger without a horse cannot deliver urgent news. A household without healthy animals becomes less prepared for difficult times. You watch a groom brush snow and moisture from a horse's coat. The animal stands calmly, familiar with the routine. There is trust between them. The relationship is practical. but it is also personal. Many people working in medieval stables spent more time with horses and other animals than with members of the upper household. They knew individual personalities, they recognized habits, they understood small changes. You notice the stable doors are positioned carefully to reduce the impact of the wind. The castle builders understood that protecting animals was important because livestock represented wealth and security. Across medieval Europe, castles and large estates often maintained groups of animals that supported daily life: horses, hunting dogs, chickens, and other creatures all played different roles within the household system. The stable was not simply a place to keep animals, it was part of the castle economy. You hear a dog barking softly near the entrance. The animal reacts to movement outside. Dogs served many purposes in medieval households. Some helped with hunting, while others provided companionship and warning. A dog could hear something before a person noticed it. A dog could sense a stranger approaching. A dog could offer comfort during long periods of isolation. You look at the animal resting near the fire inside the stable area, even in a fortress built for defense. Companionship mattered. A curious part of medieval animal care was that some valuable horses received detailed attention, including special diets and careful grooming routines. Wealthy households understood that an important animal required protection similar to other valuable possessions. A healthy horse represented years of training and investment. You walk deeper into the stable and see smaller animals nearby, chickens, possibly goats, other useful creatures. A castle needed access to different resources, and animals helped provide food, materials, and assistance. The winter storm makes their care more challenging. Food supplies must be shared, shelter must be maintained, water sources must remain available. A frozen environment creates problems for every living thing. You notice a worker breaking ice from a container so the animals can drink. A simple task, a necessary task. Winter survival depends on many actions that people rarely notice. A person carrying water, a person feeding animals, a person checking a door, a person repairing a fence. The castle survives through these repeated efforts. The evidence from medieval estates shows that animal management was carefully organized. But the personal relationships between workers and animals are harder to uncover because written records usually focus on ownership and value rather than emotions. A document may record the number of horses. It rarely describes the bond between a groom and the animal he cared for every day. You imagine those quiet moments. A worker speaking softly while preparing a horse. A child visiting the stable because animals feel less intimidating than adults. A guard finding comfort beside a familiar dog after a long night on the walls. These moments may never have been written down, yet they were part of life. The afternoon passes slowly. Outside, the blizzard continues. Inside the stable, routines continue. Fresh straw is placed, food is distributed, animals are checked again. The same care repeats each day. You realize that the castle community is larger than the people walking through its halls. The animals are part of the fortress. They share the same winter. They depend on the same preparations. They contribute to the same survival. As evening approaches, the horses become quieter. The dogs settle near warm areas, and the workers complete their final checks. The stable doors close. The wind remains outside. You stand for a moment listening to the sounds around you. The gentle movement of animals, the rustling of straw, the distant voices from the castle. These sounds create a different kind of peace. The fortress is often imagined through its towers and walls. But places are also defined by the quieter lives within them. The people, the animals, the routines, the care. A medieval castle during a great blizzard is not only a place of stone and defence, it is a living community. And tonight, beneath the frozen sky of 1471, even the animals have their place within its story. The snow has now covered the world beyond the castle walls for many days. From the highest tower, the landscape appears almost unchanged: white fields, frozen paths, silent roads. Yet inside the fortress, movement continues. The castle cannot survive on walls and courage alone. It survives through supplies. You enter the storage areas beneath the main buildings, where the air feels cooler and quieter than the rooms above. The sounds of daily life become distant. The smell of smoke disappears. Instead, you notice grain, dried foods, wood, and the faint scent of old timber. These rooms hold the future of the household. Every barrel and container represents preparation. Every stored item has a purpose. A medieval castle was not only built to resist enemies, it also needed to withstand seasons when travel became difficult and resources became uncertain. You walk past wooden shelves filled with carefully arranged supplies. Workers move slowly through the narrow spaces, checking what remains and deciding what can be used. They are not simply collecting food, they are managing time. A sack of grain today means fewer worries tomorrow. A stored barrel of preserved meat means another meal during the storm. A stack of firewood means another warm evening. By the late medieval period, many large households kept careful records of goods entering and leaving their estates. Managing supplies was a major responsibility, because a mistake could affect many people. Inside this castle, the person responsible for storage must understand balance. Too much use now creates shortages later. Too much saving can create unnecessary hardship. Every decision requires judgment. You watch a worker examine a container of grain. His hands move carefully as he checks its condition. Moisture is dangerous. Spoilage is dangerous. Waste is dangerous. Food represents labor from many people. The farmer who grew the crop, the worker who harvested it, the person who transported it, the servant who stored it. A single meal contains the effort of many lives. You continue through the storage rooms and discover different types of supplies: salted foods, dried herbs, grain, barrels of drink, materials for repairs. The castle stores more than food. It stores the ability to continue functioning. A broken tool may need replacement. A damaged piece of clothing may require repair. A missing material may become a problem when the roads are blocked. Preparation creates flexibility. A small detail from medieval storage practices is that some castles use specific containers and storage areas designed to protect valuable goods from moisture and pests. These simple methods helped preserve resources long before modern preservation technology existed. You imagine the people who prepared these rooms before winter arrived. They did not know exactly when the great blizzard would come. They did not know how long the snow would remain. They could only estimate. They watched the seasons. They remembered previous winters. They prepared according to experience. You leave the storage area and enter the courtyard, where workers are discussing the condition of supplies arriving from nearby farms. The storm has changed everything. A normal journey of a few hours may now become impossible. A road that once connected villages and markets has become a barrier. The castle must wait. Trade depends on movement. Movement depends on weather. Weather controls everyone. You think about the merchants who usually visit places like this. They carry cloth, tools, salt, spices, other valuable goods. A castle is not completely separate from the outside world. It depends on connections beyond its walls. The storm temporarily cuts those connections. You see how quickly isolation changes priorities. Luxury becomes less important. Practical needs become central. Food, fuel, safety, communication. The people inside the castle understand this. Even nobles who enjoy expensive possessions must consider basic survival during severe weather. The evidence from medieval trade networks reveals that castles and estates were connected to wider economic systems, with goods moving between towns, villages, and rural properties. A fortress was never truly alone. It was part of a larger landscape. You return to the great hall where a household official discusses remaining supplies with several workers. Their conversation is calm. There is no panic. There is planning. How much grain remains? How many animals can be supported? How much firewood is available? These questions shape the days ahead. The people in the room understand that survival is not about one dramatic decision. It is about hundreds of careful choices, a log carried today, a meal prepared wisely, a damaged item repaired instead of discarded. Small actions create security. The exact level of preparation in medieval castles varied greatly because each fortress had different resources, locations, and financial abilities. Some were well supplied for long winters, while others depended more heavily on nearby communities and regular deliveries. A castle in a wealthy region could prepare differently from a smaller fortress in a harsher landscape. There was no single medieval experience. You sit near the edge of the hall and watch the workers continue their calculations. The storm outside seems endless, but inside, the castle is measuring, planning, and adapting. The people do not know when the roads will reopen. They do not know when merchants will return. They do not know how many more nights the snow will continue falling. Yet they have what humans have always relied upon during uncertain times: preparation, cooperation, patience. As evening arrives, another supply check is completed. The storage rooms become quiet again, the doors close, the workers return to their other duties. The castle settles beneath the weight of winter, but beneath the stone floors, beneath the towers and halls, the hidden supplies remain. They are reminders of careful planning. They are reminders of human effort. They are reminders that surviving a great storm begins long before the first snow reaches the ground. The storm has transformed the castle into a world of its own. Days have passed beneath the heavy winter sky, and the people inside have learned to recognize every sound, every movement, and every change in the atmosphere. You begin to notice something unusual. The castle speaks, not with words, with sounds. Every corner of the fortress carries its own quiet voice. You walk through the corridors in the early morning and listen carefully. The wind moves through narrow openings in the stone, creating a low whisper that travels between rooms. A wooden door closes somewhere nearby. A servant walks across the floor above you. A fire suddenly cracks in the distance. These sounds create the daily rhythm of winter life. A medieval castle during a blizzard is not silent. It is full of small noises. You pause beside a stone wall and place your hand against it. The surface feels cold and uneven. The castle has existed through many seasons. It has absorbed footsteps, conversations, celebrations, and difficult moments. The walls hold traces of countless lives. You continue toward the great hall, where the morning activities have already begun. The smell of smoke reaches you first. Then the smell of food, then the sound of people speaking. The room slowly fills with movement. Someone carries supplies, someone repairs clothing, someone prepares equipment. Each task creates another sound. Together, they form the atmosphere of the castle. You realize that people living here would not experience the fortress as a simple building. They would know it through their senses. They would recognize the difference between normal sounds and unusual ones. A strange noise from the roof might suggest damage. A different movement near the gate might suggest a visitor. A change in the animal's behavior might signal something outside. Attention becomes a survival skill. Castle residents developed a close relationship with their surroundings because their environment constantly provided information. A sound, a smell, a movement, a change in temperature. Everything could carry meaning. You walk toward the kitchen and hear the familiar rhythm of preparation. Knives touching wooden boards, pots moving over flames, voices exchanging instructions. The kitchen is alive. The stable has its own sounds. The workshops have theirs. The walls have theirs. Every part of the castle contributes to the larger experience. A small detail that reveals medieval awareness of sound is that bells were often used to organize time and activity. In many communities, their ringing marked important moments, from religious services to daily routines. Before mechanical clocks became common, sound helped structure the day. A bell could tell people when to gather. A bell could signal a warning. A bell could connect different parts of a settlement. You imagine hearing such a bell during the blizzard. Its sound would travel through the cold air, crossing the courtyard and reaching people inside different rooms. The storm might hide the road, it might hide the fields, but sound could still travel. You move upward toward a tower chamber where guards rest between watches. The atmosphere changes again. Here, the wind is stronger. You hear it moving around the stone structure. The sound is deep and constant, almost like the castle itself is breathing. The guards have learned these sounds. They know when the wind is ordinary. They know when something feels different. Experience creates awareness. You look through a narrow opening and see the snow moving across the landscape. The world outside appears distant. The storm creates a strange silence between the castle and everything beyond it. Yet inside, life continues. You return to the lower rooms and notice how smells also define different areas of the fortress. The kitchen smells of cooking. The chapel smells of candles. The stable smells of hay and animals. The workshops smell of wood, leather, and metal. A castle is a collection of different environments connected together. You think about how modern people often experience places through images. Medieval people experience places through all their senses. They knew a room by its smell. They recognized a person by footsteps. They understood a building through touch and sound. Daily life was deeply physical. The available records do not always reveal how medieval people personally experienced their surroundings because written sources often focus on events, ownership, and responsibilities rather than ordinary sensory memories. A document may describe a room. It rarely describes how the room felt during a winter evening. It may record a fireplace. It may not describe the comfort of sitting beside it after a freezing day. You imagine those forgotten moments. A worker entering a warm hall after hours outside. A child hearing stories while snow strikes the windows. A guard listening to the wind during a lonely watch. These experiences are not always preserved in writing, but they were real. As afternoon approaches, the storm becomes calmer for a short time. The wind weakens, and the castle notices the change. People look toward windows. Workers step outside briefly. Animals become more active. Even small improvements in weather create hope. You walk through the courtyard and feel the difference. The air remains cold, the snow remains deep, but the silence has changed. The storm no longer feels as powerful. The castle responds immediately. A servant clears another pathway. A worker checks damaged areas. A guard examines the walls. Life adjusts quickly. The fortress has learned to listen. As night returns, the sounds become softer. The fires burn lower. The corridors become quieter. People return to their sleeping areas. The castle rests. But the wind continues moving around the towers, carrying the same ancient sounds that have surrounded this place for centuries. You sit near the fire and listen. The crackling flames, the distant footsteps, the gentle movement of the building, the winter night. These sounds tell a story without words. They tell of patience. They tell of survival. They tell of ordinary people living through an extraordinary season. And within the stone walls of this 1471 castle, the Great Blizzard becomes not only something people endured, it becomes something they remembered. The storm has changed the way people inside the castle interact with one another. When roads disappear beneath snow and the outside world becomes unreachable, relationships become more important. You begin noticing the small moments between people. A servant helping another carry supplies, a guard sharing a warm drink after a cold watch, a family gathering near the fire during the evening. The blizzard has closed the gates, but it has also brought everyone closer together. You walk through the great hall during the afternoon and see groups of people gathered around the flames. The room is filled with quiet conversations. The sound of voices rises and falls. The smell of burning wood hangs in the air. The warmth of the fire reaches across the stone floor. For a moment, the hall feels less like a defensive structure and more like a shared home. A castle creates a unique social world. People from different backgrounds live within the same walls, each with their own responsibilities and expectations. A noble family occupies the highest position. Knights protect the fortress. Officials manage resources. Servants complete daily tasks. Craftsmen maintain important objects. Yet during a severe winter storm, everyone depends on the same basic things: food, warmth, shelter, companionship. You notice how the usual boundaries between people become slightly softer during difficult times. A person of higher status may speak directly with workers because everyone is concerned about the same challenge. A servant may bring news from one part of the castle to another. A guard may rely on someone else to provide a meal after a long night. The castle functions because relationships exist between people. Medieval society was highly structured, and social rank influenced many aspects of life, from clothing and housing to responsibilities and privileges. However, daily survival often required cooperation across different groups. You watch a kitchen worker offer a bowl of warm food to a tired guard returning from the walls. The exchange is simple. No ceremony, no grand words, just kindness. Small gestures become more noticeable when people share difficult conditions. You move through the corridors and notice moments of friendship. Two workers repair a damaged tool together. A servant helps another carry heavy supplies. Children gather around an older storyteller. The castle is filled with connections. Not all relationships are peaceful. Living closely together creates tension as well. The storm limits privacy. The same rooms are used repeatedly. The same people are seen every day. Small frustrations can grow. A disagreement about supplies. A complaint about work. A conflict between personalities. Human nature does not disappear behind stone walls. you notice a quiet argument near the storage rooms. Two workers discuss how much material should be used for repairs. Their voices are controlled. But their concern is clear. Resources matter. Decisions matter. A small mistake could affect everyone. Yet disagreements do not always divide communities. Often, they reveal how much people care about protecting their shared home. An overlooked part of medieval life is that communities developed many informal ways of maintaining cooperation. Reputation, personal relationships, shared responsibilities, and mutual dependence often influenced how people behaved toward one another. A person's actions affected how others viewed them. Trust had practical value. You return to the main hall as evening approaches and see people preparing for another night indoors. The storm has created a temporary world. The castle has become the centre of everything. There are no markets to visit, no nearby gatherings, no easy journeys. People must create their own entertainment and comfort. Stories become important. Music becomes important. Conversation becomes important. You hear someone telling a tale near the fire. The listeners react with laughter, surprise, and curiosity for a while. The storm disappears from their thoughts. Storytelling connects people. It carries memories from one generation to another. It allows imagination to replace the outside world. The exact nature of everyday friendships and personal emotions inside medieval castles is difficult to fully understand because surviving documents often focus on property, laws, and official duties rather than private relationships. A record might tell us who worked in a household. It rarely tells us who someone considered a close friend. It may describe responsibilities. It may not describe affection. Yet people living inside these castles were still human. They formed attachments. They remembered kindness. They noticed absence. They valued companionship. You imagine a servant who has worked beside the same person for many winters, a guard who trusts the person standing beside him during a night watch, a child who feels safe because familiar faces surround them. These connections created stability. As the evening continues, the castle becomes quieter. People separate into smaller groups. Some return to sleeping chambers. Some remain near the fire. Some continue their duties. The storm outside still covers the land, but inside the fortress, life continues through relationships. The walls protect bodies. The community protects spirits. You sit near the fire and watch the final moments of the day. A person adds another piece of wood. Someone closes a wooden door. A quiet conversation fades into silence. The castle rests, but the bonds between people remain. Centuries later, the towers and walls may be what visitors notice first. They may admire the architecture, they may study the defences, they may photograph the ancient stones. But behind those stones were ordinary relationships, people helping, people disagreeing, people caring, people sharing the same uncertain winter. And during the Great Blizzard of 1471, those connections became one of the strongest defences the castle possessed. The days inside the castle begin to feel slower. The Great Blizzard continues to hold the fortress in its frozen grip, and time is measured differently now. Not by journeys, not by visitors arriving at the gate, not by distant events beyond the walls. Instead, time moves through simple things. The burning of a candle, the changing of a guard, the preparation of another meal, the arrival of another evening. You wake once again to the sound of wind moving round the towers. The storm has become familiar, almost like another presence living inside the castle. The people no longer react with surprise to every gust. They listen, they observe, they adapt. You walk through the corridors and notice a quieter mood among the residents. The first days of the storm brought urgency. Now there is patience. Everyone understands that waiting has become part of survival. The outside world cannot be reached easily. The roads remain hidden. The fields remain covered. The castle must continue on its own. You enter the great hall and see people performing familiar tasks. A servant repairs a damaged cloak. A craftsman shapes a piece of wood. A guard cleans equipment after returning from duty. The activities are ordinary. That is exactly why they matter. Routine creates comfort when circumstances feel uncertain. Across medieval households, daily schedules were often shaped by repeated tasks connected to work, meals, religion, and household responsibilities. Familiar patterns helped people organize life even during difficult seasons. You notice how the castle follows its own rhythm. Morning begins with fires and preparation. The middle of the day brings work. Evening brings gathering. Night brings watch and rest. The storm may change the surroundings. It does not completely change the structure of life. You walk toward the gatehouse and see guards looking beyond the entrance. They are searching for signs that conditions are improving. A clear path, a traveller, a message, anything that suggests the outside world is returning. Hope arrives through small discoveries, a weaker wind, a brighter sky, a patch of visible ground. The smallest change can feel important. You think about how different winter feels inside a medieval fortress compared with today. There are no instant messages, no weather forecasts arriving every hour, no easy way to know when conditions will improve. People rely on observation. They look at clouds. They feel the wind. They study the landscape. Knowledge comes from experience. You notice a worker standing near a window, watching snow fall from the roof. He is not simply looking, he is assessing. A large amount of snow could create problems. A damaged roof could threaten the people below. A blocked entrance could affect movement. The castle requires constant attention. A small detail from medieval buildings is that caretakers often had to monitor structures closely because weather could damage stone, wood, and roofing materials. Maintenance was not occasional. It was part of everyday responsibility. You continue through the fortress and find that the long confinement has changed how people spend their free time. Some play simple games, some tell stories, some pray quietly, some repair personal belongings. The storm has created long periods when people must remain indoors. Boredom becomes another challenge. The human mind needs activity. You sit near the fire and listen to conversations around you. Someone remembers a previous winter. Someone wonders when merchants will return. Someone jokes about the endless snow, even during hardship. People find ways to create moments of humour. Laughter survives in difficult places. The available sources from medieval households rarely explain how people emotionally experience long periods of isolation, leaving many questions about their private thoughts and coping methods. A written record might mention that a castle remained occupied during winter. It might not reveal whether the residents felt lonely. It might not describe their hopes. You imagine those quiet thoughts. Person looking toward the gate and wondering when they will see a familiar visitor again. A child waiting for the first chance to play outside. A worker dreaming of warmer days. Waiting has always been a human experience. As another evening arrives, the storm begins showing small signs of weakness. The wind is not as aggressive. The snowfall becomes lighter. People notice. They do not celebrate yet. They are cautious. Winter can change quickly. A calm moment does not always mean the end. Still, the atmosphere feels different. The castle seems to relax slightly. You walk outside briefly into the courtyard. Snow still covers the ground, and the cold air touches your face immediately. But the sky appears brighter. The world feels closer. You hear sounds that have been hidden beneath the storm. A bird in the distance, a drop of melting snow from a roof edge. The movement of workers clearing paths, small signs of change. The castle community has survived another stage of winter, not through a single heroic moment, not through dramatic action, through thousands of ordinary choices. A person carried firewood, a person prepared food, a person repaired clothing, a person watched the walls, a person helped a neighbour, together. These actions created endurance. You return inside and sit near the familiar fire. The flames move gently. The hall feels peaceful. The storm may still continue tomorrow. There may be more cold days ahead. But something has changed. The people inside the castle know they can endure. They have learned the rhythm of the blizzard. They have learned the strength of preparation. They have learned the value of each other. And as the night settles over the ancient fortress, the waiting continues. But it is no longer filled only with uncertainty. It carries a quiet confidence. The castle has stood through the worst of the storm, and soon the world beyond the walls will begin to return. The morning arrives differently this time. For the first time in many days, the castle does not wake beneath the full force of the blizzard. The wind is quieter, the sky is brighter, the snow remains, but the atmosphere has changed. You stand near a narrow window and watch pale sunlight touch the frozen landscape. The world outside is still covered in white, yet small details begin to return. A tree branch appears beneath the snow. A section of the road becomes visible. A dark patch of earth emerges near the walls. The storm is slowly releasing its hold. Inside the castle, people notice immediately. They do not rush. They have learned patience. A few cautious steps outside are more valuable than a careless journey into dangerous conditions. You walk toward the courtyard and feel the difference beneath your boots. The snow is no longer as soft and deep as before. It has become heavier, harder. The cold remains, but the endless feeling of isolation begins to fade. Workers gather near the entrance, preparing to inspect the damage caused by the storm. The castle must now recover. Surviving the blizzard was one challenge. Repairing what the winter changed is another. You see servants clearing snow from pathways. They move carefully because beneath the snow are familiar objects hidden for days. A forgotten tool, a piece of broken wood, a fallen branch. The courtyard slowly reveals itself again. Winter has covered the castle. Now the castle begins uncovering itself. The workers examine doors, roofs, and outer walls. Severe weather can test every part of a medieval structure. Wood can weaken, stone can crack, roof coverings can shift. Maintenance begins as soon as conditions allow. Medieval castles required constant care because they were complex buildings exposed to weather, time, and daily use. Their strength came not only from their original construction but also from generations of repair. You watch a craftsman inspect a damaged wooden section near one of the buildings. His hands move carefully. He knows what signs to look for. Experience guides him. The castle is old, but the people caring for it understand its needs. You walk toward the stables and notice the animals responding to the changing weather. The horses seem more active. The dogs spend more time outside. The stable workers open doors briefly to allow fresh air inside. After many days of confinement, movement returns slowly. Even animals seem to sense that the world is changing. A small feature of medieval winter recovery was the importance of cleaning and reorganizing spaces after harsh weather. Snow, mud, and moisture could create new problems if left unmanaged. The end of a storm did not mean the end of work. Often, it meant a different kind of work began. You enter the kitchen and find the familiar activity continuing. Food preparation has not stopped, but the mood feels lighter. People talk about the weather. They discuss what they can see beyond the walls. They wonder when normal travel will return. Hope enters through conversation. The castle is no longer waiting in complete uncertainty. You notice someone carrying a small object recovered from the courtyard. A wooden toy, a tool handle, a piece of clothing decoration. Objects lost beneath snow are returning one by one. Each item carries a small memory of the storm. You think about how quickly ordinary things become meaningful. A simple spoon found in the snow, a damaged glove, a piece of rope. These objects remind people of the days they spent together. The available records from medieval life rarely capture these small personal memories, because official writings usually focused on important matters such as ownership, payments, and legal events. The everyday objects of ordinary people often tell quieter stories. An old tool can reveal work. A repaired garment can reveal care. A simple household item can reveal routine. You continue through the castle and notice the mood among the residents. The storm has changed something. People seem more connected. They experience the same uncertainty. They shared the same walls. They depended on one another. A guard who once stood alone on the battlements now has a story to share. A servant who carried supplies through the snow now remembers the difficult days. A child who watched the storm from a window now sees the first signs of spring approaching. Hard seasons create memories. You climb toward the battlements once more. The view is different now. The snow still covers much of the land. But the landscape feels open again. The road is visible in places. Smoke rises from distant homes. Birds return to the quiet fields. The castle is no longer separated completely from the outside world. You place your hand against the cold stone and think about everything these walls have witnessed. Generations have passed here. Storms have come and gone. People have lived ordinary lives inside extraordinary buildings. The castle has survived because people adapted. They understood the weather. They cared for their supplies. They maintained their homes. They helped each other. The great blizzard was not defeated by one person. It was endured by an entire community as evening approaches. The fires burn warmly inside the castle once again. The sounds of preparation continue. Repairs continue. Life continues. Tomorrow may bring travellers. The following days may reopen roads and restore connections. But tonight, the people inside the fortress enjoy something they have missed, a feeling of possibility. The winter is not finished completely. Snow still covers the hills. Cold still remains in the air. Yet the darkest part has passed. You sit near the fire and listen to the castle settling into another night. The walls remain strong. The people remain together. And beyond the gates, the world slowly begins returning. The first clear morning after the great blizzard arrives quietly. You wake before the castle becomes fully active, and notice something different. The wind has changed. It no longer pushes against the walls with the same force. The air feels calmer. Outside the narrow window, sunlight spreads across the snow-covered landscape, creating a soft glow over the towers and rooftops. The storm that once surrounded the fortress has become a memory. You walk through the castle one final time and recognize the places that carried everyone through the winter. The kitchen where warm meals were prepared, the hall where people gathered beside the fire, the chapel where prayers were whispered, the stables where animals were protected, the battlements where guards watched through endless darkness. Every place has a story. Every room contains traces of the people who lived there. You step into the courtyard and watch workers continue their recovery. Snow is moved aside, supplies are reorganized, and damaged areas are examined. The castle is returning to normal, but it is not exactly the same. The people inside have changed. A difficult season leaves memories behind. You see a guard speaking with a servant who helped prepare meals during the coldest nights. You see workers sharing stories about the moments when the storm seemed strongest. You see children looking at the remaining snow with curiosity rather than fear. The blizzard has become part of their shared history. Across medieval Europe, castles were not temporary shelters but long-term communities where generations could live, work, and maintain traditions. Their stories were created not only through battles and politics, but also through ordinary days like these. You walk toward the gatehouse as preparations begin for renewed contact with the outside world. Soon, travelers may arrive. Soon, messages may be delivered. Soon, trade routes may reopen. The castle will once again connect with villages, markets, and distant places. Yet a part of this winter will remain inside the people who experienced it. A small discovery from many medieval sites is how ordinary objects can reveal extraordinary stories. Broken tools, household items, and personal belongings often show how people lived more clearly than grand monuments alone. The smallest objects can preserve the quiet moments of history. A cup beside a fire, a repaired cloak, a child's wooden toy, a worker's tool. These simple things reveal a world of human effort. You climb the final steps toward the battlements and look across the landscape. The snow is beginning to soften. The roads are slowly appearing. The fields are returning. The castle no longer feels like an isolated island. It feels connected again. You remember the first moment you arrived during the violent storm. The walls seemed enormous. The wind seemed unstoppable. The outside world seemed impossibly distant. Now, after watching the people inside survive through patience and cooperation, you see the castle differently. Its true strength was never only the stone. It was never only the towers. It was never only the defences. The true strength was the community living within those walls, the servants who carried supplies, the cooks who prepared meals, the guards who stayed awake through freezing nights, the families who shared warmth, the workers who repaired what was damaged, the children who found moments of happiness. All of them created the story of this winter fortress. You stand above the castle one last time and feel the cold morning air around you. The world is peaceful now. The great blizzard has passed, but the memory remains. A medieval castle was not a silent monument waiting for history to happen. It was a home. It was a workplace. It was a place where people laughed, worried, worked, rested, and hoped. And during the winter of 1471, when snow covered the roads and the wind surrounded the walls, Hundreds of ordinary lives continued behind those ancient stones. The castle endured because people endured. The winter ended because time moved forward. And the story of those who lived inside the fortress remained hidden in the echoes of the halls, the warmth of the fires, and the quiet strength of human connection. Now, as you leave the castle behind, the morning light grows softer, the towers become smaller in the distance, the snowy landscape stretches peacefully beneath the sky. You no longer hear the violent roar of the storm. You hear only gentle sounds, a light breeze moving through the fields, a distant bird returning to the quiet landscape. The soft movement of life beginning again. You imagine the castle settling into another day, fires glowing, meals being prepared, people walking through familiar rooms, the rhythm of life continuing as it always has. The centuries pass, but the simple experiences remain familiar. The desire for warmth, the comfort of companionship, the hope that difficult moments will eventually end. The old stone walls slowly disappear from your view, but the feeling of the winter castle stays with you, a place surrounded by snow, a place filled with ordinary people, a place where patience, kindness, and courage quietly carried everyone forward. The evening fires, the whispered stories, the footsteps in the corridors, the gentle sounds of a community surviving together, all fade into a peaceful memory. The cold becomes distant, the wind becomes softer, the castle rests beneath the sky, and now you can rest too. Sleep well,